All right, everybody, welcome to Coffee for Closers. Today's a very special episode. We actually pulled this tape from our weekly federal training every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard for anybody in our federal program that's interested in, I guess, using or better utilizing the system, training, getting better how to handle objections. We do a training live on the air for anybody to comment. This week had a very special one where we went over some of the statistics, and I thought it was important and had enough value for those that are interested in working in the federal space, or those that have heard about Megastar's program in the federal space, or for those just in a chance or in a position in their career where they're looking to add new referral services or how to better take care of their clients while they're waiting to do business with them. This was a good episode to learn all that. So here's our episode from yesterday's training, our federal appointment training, live with Brian Benham and, of course, my co-host, Rick Kohlmeyer. Hope you enjoy. We were about an hour after it's like Jacob's record got ruined because it was my fault.
I think Jacob was on time.
And then I played it off like it was Brian's fault that we couldn't do it at 2.
Yeah.
It was really my fault that we couldn't do it at 2.
A lot of swords being passed around.
Yeah, it wasn't good. I ended up having to go. Sorry we're late, everybody. Thanks for pushing it back an hour. I ended up having to drive down to Fort Myers this morning to capture a testimonial for one of our advisors that's putting on a huge convention in New Orleans next week. And They wanted to capture some audio and some video from one of their trusted clients that, is going to, air as a commercial at the convention for that advisor. And I'll just say that's a huge testimony of what we're willing to do for our advisors. I'll tell you, 5 hours of driving to capture 15, 20 minutes of audio. Brian, you know what I'm talking about, man.
Absolutely.
But in addition to that, yesterday, Rick brought up the great idea of bringing Brian on the show to talk more about something that we're talking about here today, which a lot of advisors got the email. We're talking about 10Xing your return on these federal appointments and just what our stats have shown. And what it indicated, what Rick had pointed out, was that, Brian, you are kind of a shining example of how this is or why this is working. So we want to pick your brain on why you think this statistics or these statistics are coming out this way for us, and pick your brain a tiny bit. So anyway, thanks for being on the show, Brian, coming out and teaching us all.
Always enjoy it.
So maybe we'll just start by jumping up with the statistics. I should welcome Rick too.
Yeah, I'm here.
You're always here.
Yeah.
Always here.
Good to be here.
Rick's here.
Yeah.
All right. So we did some research recently that indicated to us something pretty interesting. When we are thinking about buying these appointments, a lot of advisors, we see the data, most advisors in the program buy about 10 appointments per month, 10 per month. And that's kind of where they've kind of pittered off. They continue to buy them. They either buy them on repeat or they buy them in, maybe they're doing other things. Mm-hmm. But they're looking back at the federal space and they're like, well, why isn't this becoming extraordinarily successful like some of the top guys that they bring on the show, i.e. Brian or Melissa or Johnny or, who else have we had on the show recently? I mean, we had, Bridget. Bridget's another one. She doesn't come on the show yet, but she's another one. These are people that buy these all the time. And what we've noticed is that, well, two things are happening statistics-wise. One, as you buy more per month, so that's what the chart you're seeing on your screen is. As you buy 1,000 or 10 appointments, so that's $1,000, and that's what you're seeing at the bottom. There's the cost per batch if you're an active producer with Megastar. So active, you're paying $1,000 per block of 10. If you're not active, it's $2,500 per block of 10. So $1,000 as you buy 10 more appointments. So at 20, you're seeing an increase to $250K in average rollover per month. At $3K in spend or 30 appointments per month, you're seeing $430K per month in rollover. At $4,000 or 40 appointments per month, you're seeing $780K in rollover. And then at $5,000, you're starting to see that return kind of level off there at 50 appointments per month. And that's $1.1 million in average rollover. And it's really interesting because you're starting to see that it's like, okay, as you're working more appointments, of course, you're going to have more rollovers, which was interesting, Brian, is that we're getting more rollovers, but it's compounding to a degree, like pretty largely. It's increasing more than 1-to-1, right? And that was, especially at that like 3 to 4. Like, so there's a point where it seems to be like you're getting too many appointments and you're not able to really yield there's a point of diminishing return there. But at that 30 to 40 appointment mark, you're really starting to see it sing. And it's almost ideal to have, that amount of appointment load. And maybe we'll start there. But the other statistic, too, before we jump into Brian's opinions on this, is that we're starting to see the majority of sales come between day 30 and 90. The majority of sales coming between day 30 and 90 of the original appointment date, and not day 1 to 30. And we've talked about this recently in the show. It's like you got to find a way to make that. So that statistic was proven right. But Brian, what do you think is contributing to this? Why do you think there's such a compounding effect towards working more appointments per month, and it's not like this 1-to-1 ratio? And maybe talk about how you've worked these appointments or just worked the federal market in general for years and speak from that experience.
Well, first I'll talk kind of outside looking in at that producer that's just buying just a small amount. And by the way, if the statistics are correct, even at $120,000 worth of production on just 1,000, that's like 6 times your money on a return.
Oh yeah.
But if you extrapolate that out to the end of the chart, I think there was $5,000 spent. It was about 12 times your money. Okay, now there's lots of reasons that would go into that. Part of it's also luck. I mean, you're getting lucky enough on a short run to be able to get a good opportunity. And that's what I always tell people when I talk to them about jumping on these lead systems. I said, look, you've got to look long term, and I hope you get $1 million opportunity in the first 5. But if you don't, it doesn't mean the system isn't bad. But the more the numbers, the better the opportunity, and that's why that exponentially your production is going to go up. Now, as far as we're concerned, I can imagine only having 2.5 appointments a week or opportunities a week. Number one, what do you do in your other time that's generating opportunity for yourself if you're only looking at a handful of opportunities over the course of a month? So we couldn't afford to run on that small of a number. And so driving for more opportunities obviously is going to give you that opportunity, and that's why your number should go up extremely high. Here, what we're doing, probably one of the reasons why we've been so successful with the lead systems, is it goes back to our original philosophy. Our philosophy is we treat every single client, every single opportunity the same. Whether you have $1 or $1 million, you're going to get the same treatment from Benham across the board. We have that reputation, and we've been building on that reputation longer than most, but we've been building on that reputation in the federal space, for 15 years, way before we had lead systems. But I think you can translate what our philosophy has been over the years into you building your practice now, and seeing, we can be a witness to you, and our testimonial would be something that I hope everybody would follow. But you have to realize that we worked hard originally to receive and reap the benefits that we have today. And the quicker you can create a database of those opportunities, in other words, buy a whole bunch of leads, as many as you can buy now, and you're going to get to a point on down the road quicker where your inventory is going to be able to be harvested on a more consistent basis. But if you only have 10 leads a month or whatever, daggone, it's going to take forever to get that good inventory in that base. And so in our situation, that's probably why we do so well. We wrote, I think I mentioned this before, we wrote over $1 million last year on the first workshop I ever did in the federal space, back 12, 13 years ago. Yeah. And that's because we're continually touching these people, and they remember that Benham's the good guy because we did all the reporting, we've helped them, we've held their hand and not made a nickel on them, for 12, 13 years, but suddenly, they come to us and they're ready to retire.
Right. Why do you think in the federal space per se, though? It's like, because I could do a Social Security workshop tomorrow and yield a higher close rate in the first 30 days than I could in the federal market. It feels like, at least. Why do you think that's so different from the Fed market to, say, your plain Jane Social Security workshop?
Well, the plain Jane Social Security workshop, we still have opportunities for 401k rollovers. We have people that have, brokerage accounts and things, that other opportunities that we come across that we can almost instantaneously be writing business. I will back off and say, we typically don't write business on our Social Security people for, in 30 to 60 days, just because of our process. We're not a one-call close office. We never have been, because we are so thorough with our overall planning. We incorporate taxes. We incorporate the entire process when we're meeting with somebody. But we also know that whenever we've earned that client, they're a client for life, because we just do so much for them that they're never going to go anywhere else and get better served. Sure. So our process takes a little bit longer. But in the federal space, it's kind of like, if you can look at federal agencies, it's kind of like me going and doing a workshop for the FAA versus doing a workshop for the VA. I can go do a workshop in a hospital, and I know that I'm going to get business quick. Okay, maybe in the first 30 days. Yeah. But if I go do something at the FAA, it's all about timing and when people are going to retire. And the FAA, they're 56 or older or whatever, or before, or older. That's when those opportunities, those doors start to open. So sure. It has such a narrow opportunity. And that's part of the thing with the lead system. We're hitting all the different agencies, and you're going to have some, great opportunity, but that opportunity may not be today. It might be in 30 days or 60 days. And I know that is what our statistics are proving. Mm-hmm. But folks, I got to tell you that opportunity is in future inventory for you, and it might be 4 or 5 years. And the thing is, if you're in this business today, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I believe too many people look at it as a sprint, and that's what they're looking for, and not treating it as a marathon. They're not treating it as a true business. Yeah. And your true business model should be the approach of taking care of every single person, be an absolute hero to every one of those leads that you get from Megastar. I mean, every single one. Give them good service, give them good reporting, show them Social Security analysis, give them track analysis, let them know that what you do, give them something tangible. If you have to, mail them a report to their home. That's something they're not going to get anywhere else. Send them the sample reports that you've heard me talk about on this site before. Anytime we deliver a report to somebody, I'll just remind everybody, I deliver a sample track report, and I ask it to give them to a couple of their friends. And that has driven a ton of opportunities for us. So if you think about this, if I get 10 leads from Megastar this week or this month on federal, and let's say I get to talk to 3 or 4 of those people, and I send them 3 or 4 reports, I can PDF them a report. But if I would mail them some reports and say, by the way, I went to the trouble of printing one. By the way, hope y'all heard, I went to the trouble of printing one for you. I assembled it, I put it together, I sent it to you. I worked for you. I took some time and I worked for you. People, tell your clients or your prospects what you're doing. I always tell them, I'm still working for you. I'm doing homework for you. The idea that I'm taking time to do something special for you out of the way to help benefit you, even though these people know I can't make a nickel on you right now, goes a long way. Yeah. But anytime we send these reports, we're sending copies of reports as well, and that's generating referrals for us. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm getting off. No,
you're 100% right. I could not agree more with, describing. I find ourselves a lot of the times, Rick, when we're working these with advisors, explaining like, hey, yeah, my team and I are doing this, and just checking it, especially when we're kind of bridging that gap between, in the second and third, maybe even sometimes fourth and fifth appointments going on with somebody, especially when I know they're not going to make a decision for 60 to 90 days. I find myself doing these pulse check calls with folks where it's like, hey, hey, by the way, I know you sent me that statement. I've got the team running a couple of analyses. Can you tell me this about the account and this about the account and why you did that? And 2 things are happening there. One, the client is then feeling like, oh, they're still doing work. Oh my gosh, they're still doing something for me. And so subconsciously, if they're not willing to move forward, they're like, oh my God, I've got these poor souls working in the background, doing something for me. And if I have no intent behind sitting down with them again, I shouldn't continue to lead them on. And they start to either ghost a little bit more or brush you off or tell you that you shouldn't be doing that, or it keeps them engaged and they're like, oh yeah, that's what this was. And that, again, it's almost like a confirmation call for that next appointment.
without just calling and saying, hey, I'm calling to confirm our appointment, right?
Right.
You're adding value and getting a pulse check at the same time while keeping them firmly engaged into like the whole process.
Oh, for sure. And then on the other side of it, what you were saying before of like why the federal employee seems to be taking a little bit longer, I agree. The agencies are definitely a reason. Some agencies are different. Some people just don't want to make a decision until they're retiring about moving TSP assets. And to that point, that is, for most federal employees, that is a good majority of their wealth tied up in that TSP.
Yeah.
Whereas when you do a Social Security event, it's much more likely that the person coming to that has outside assets or assets that were left behind somewhere, or assets that are sitting in brokerage or something like that, where they're less attached to it. With the TSP, it seems like, oh, this is a federal benefit and I need to contribute to it. And you know, I never really thought about moving that. And whereas people going to Social Security or retirement planning workshops are almost more in the mindset of,
where can I get a better deal on
I need
this?
to move this, or I'm not so happy with this, and I need to come up with a better plan for this. Whereas Fed employees, when we start talking to them about, oh, you have options outside of TSP and you could execute those options today, being that you're over 59 and a half, they need time to come to fruition, like come to a conclusion on that, like digest that for a second. And if you're pushy, then they never do anything. And if you wait, you know, do you have the methods or the ability, or is your practice set up in a way to harvest that client for the next 30, 60, 90 days, something like that?
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of them think that I've experienced a lot of times telling somebody for the first time that you can move your TSP. Yeah. Right? Like having a conversation, be like, no, you're not stuck here. This isn't forever. And especially a lot of them, like you said, it's like the TSP is my federal benefit, and I can't do anything with it until I'm no longer a federal employee through retirement.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, it's not true. You can, as long as you're 59 and a half, you can move it and do whatever. And it's like, no, but
a lot of them are coming to terms with this isn't their first pension, right? Like for the first time, like they don't even realize that this isn't their first pension yet. And now you just told them not only is it not your first pension, you're going to get this check. You're also now potentially going to be able to move this money. And they, you know, might be 5-6 years out from retirement, never even thought about moving that money. Right. And so anyway, I don't think a lot of advisors are geared up to be like, hey, you're the first person telling them this. Now it's your job to cradle and nurture this for the next however many times they need to feel digested, and sense that situation out for a little bit. And the more you stack these closing opportunities, if that's the truth, and it's going to be 60, 90 days before you close on your first federal business or the majority of your federal business, then you need to find a way to survive in this business for the 60, 90 days. And then you should be on a repeat where you are constantly closing business like Brian. Brian doesn't even realize probably that you've got a 60, 90-day run rate on leads when they come in. Maybe you do. You obviously know your numbers. Yeah. But again, it's like a lot of people don't realize that it's been that long, and then they just feel that I'm constantly closing business. I'm constantly closing business. It can't possibly be that long. But really, you've sat in front of that prospect for 60, 90 days. And I'll see people buy leads too. They buy their first batch. They wait 90 days, and they buy their second, and then it's on repeat. And why
Terrible
is that?
idea. Yeah, terrible idea.
Right.
You gotta keep going. You've got to have a process. You got to stick to it, day in and day out, day in and day out. That just reminded me of COVID. If you remember back in COVID, I was out for almost 2 months.
Yep.
And I normally would have been very concerned about that, but we had built up so much momentum that during COVID, we were writing business all through that process. I was at home sick, and Logan was still writing business in our office, and we didn't see a depression in our productivity at all. And I wasn't even in the office for 2 months because we had so much opportunity build up. And I always talk about ending strong to start strong. And what I'm talking about there is recognizing that you're going to have lulls. Thanksgiving, Christmas, always a lull. And it used to be, usually the 1st of February, my business would drop in the tank because of that holiday lull. We don't have that anymore. And we're always busy. We're always writing business. Every week we're writing business. But if you would go and buy 10 leads now and you wait for 90 days, I guarantee you one thing, you might write some business. That's great, but you're going to have a lull because you're not being consistent. You've got to create an overhead. You've got to, what I mean by that is invest in yourself. And if I just looked at those statistics, let me say something again. If you're that first number, I think it was $1,000 a month or whatever, 6 times your money, that's great. There you go. But look at that $5,000 that you're spending. If you're writing 1.1 million and just had a street level contract, you're getting 12 times your money back for that investment. Why in the world would you not do that? And why in the world would you wait for 90 days? And so being consistent with that is going to give you more opportunities. You're going to be able to write business. And here's the biggest thing. We keep talking about the 60 to 90 day thing. And I know that's true, but it's the business you're going to get in 3 years from those other 5 or 6 leads that you bought out of 10.
Yeah.
That's where all the opportunity is. And just imagine this, if you're consistent with that purchasing of leads, and I'm just talking now, I'm going to throw this out. If you're consistent with that, maybe out of 1 or 2 years, you won't be writing business every single week off of leads. You got to still fill in the gap. But man, you do this for a long period of time, I promise you, you're going to have opportunity at your doorstep all the time because of all the good things that you did in your past in planting that seed and being able to harvest it on down the road because you were willing to invest in yourself years ago. It will come back and pay pay dividends. And that's what we're seeing in our office now.
I'll tell you this. There are 15, 16, somewhere around there, advisors buying 50 appointments or more per month. And every one of them is on pace to do more than 12 million this year. Mm-hmm. Every single one of them.
And they're not going to wait 90 days.
No, absolutely not. But to be fair to you, man, I remember back 2-3 years into the Megastar world, you came in and you were frustrated about an event that had gone off poorly. And it's like, look, you guys need to understand as a marketing organization, the costs of a bad event. Yep. And you showed your calendar and showed it by week. It's like, here's when I'm working first appointments. This is when I'm working second appointments. This is when I'm working third appointments. And I work 2 events per month. And so it's like, okay, it's going to have a lagging effect, but eventually in 2 months, I'm going to have a blank week. Mm-hmm. And if I have a blank week here, then it's like, this is the train of effects that happens beyond that. Yep. And it's like, whoa, that was a very sobering effect. I remember
it was all like color coordinated for like first appointment, second appointment, third, new appointments. Yeah, I remember that. Yep.
And it was like, here's the cost of the top of the pipeline going dry for a bit. And it was about having a consistent flow. Well, here's a consistent flow. You pay $5,000, you're getting 50 appointments. No question about it. It's not like you're paying $5,000, hopefully the workshop goes well and you get enough prospects there. Mm-hmm. It's $5,000, 50 appointments, done. Yep. And you're going to get, those statistics, 30 to 50%, 59.5-year-olds, of which, a certain amount will have assets. But this is the statistics we're showing you are accounting for those, right? So, again, not one of the people buying 50 or more appointments per month is averaging. And quite frankly, if you go to the 40 appointments or more, you're still having almost every one of those top 20 buying or over 10 million that year. Yeah. It's insanity. Yeah. And when we looked at it, we're like, oh, my God, it's just this tipping point of you get past, and it has something to do, too, with experience. You're now getting a chance to cut your teeth a little bit with talking to Fed employees. You're living in that Fed world a little bit more, having a conversation.
3-4 appointments a day, except for instead of one every 2 days, right? Imagine if you did, we were talking about golf before we get on here. It's like, imagine you played golf once or twice a month. Like, you're going to be terrible forever. You're never going to be, in the groove, in the pattern, hitting the balls, right? It's the same thing with sales, right? You do one phone call a day. You're thinking about it the whole time leading up to it. You're like, I really got to hit this one out of the park, blah, blah, blah. You missed that. Yeah. You got one on Thursday, and it's like, what am I going to do from Monday to Thursday? Yeah. Stress about it all week.
Well, that's what he's saying. He's like, I don't know what you're doing. And then, so Brian, tell me this. That year or two that we had you traveling all over the country doing hundreds of workshops for federal employees.
I remember it well.
I know. How much do you feel like you benefited from just an experience level talking to federal employees by doing that on repeat?
Oh, if I could do it in my sleep. I mean, and the presentations were so strong just because I was, I did 86 different events, I think, that one year, 86 different cities, multiple events, but it's 6 different cities. But the presentation was so strong. And frankly, it translated into a lot of business because the ratio of requests for appointments was so high because, frankly, the presentation was good. And I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but it was really good. But then on the other hand, my personal production that year was lower than it had ever been because I was on the street more, but I was out of the game as well. Yeah.
But that experience, though, I have to imagine has paid dividends since you got back into more personal production back in Indy. as far as just, again, not that you didn't know Fed benefits going into it. Clearly you did, but it's just a matter of talking and seeing everything from all over. That confidence level had to be so high.
The case studies that I came across that year were priceless. So now if I have, if I was only doing 10 calls a week, every single call, I can probably share some type of a case history, or, hey, I had this happen, I had that happen. And if you're only giving yourself 10 opportunities a month versus 50, you're only going to get 20% of the opportunities to find a unique situation to learn from. And that's probably another reason why your statistics are proving that by purchasing more leads, you're getting a higher rate of closing. It's because you're getting more experiences that you can draw from to better your closing opportunity.
That's such a great point. Imagine if you only like saw things, again, we run track reports for years and, case design for years. Imagine like you could run 10 appointments and see a different federal situation on every 10 appointments.
Oh, so
and
true.
Just continuously doing that and being like, wow, this is new. I don't know what to do here. Let me go figure this out.
Yeah,
right?
you become like unstoppable from an ability to say like draw on an experience for, oh, you know what? That's interesting you say that. I just was talking with somebody last week about that exact same thing, and we ended up actually coming to this conclusion. Yeah. It's like every situation comes up. Eventually, you have a story, a quip, or something to pull from on all of these, and that's what you're saying, Brian. It's like
versus, I did this last month. Let me remember how I did this, right? Like
Let
I
me
did
get
see
with
this.
my
I saw it
people.
last month. Let me remember this. I just got to do some homework real quick. Yeah,
I'm like 90% on that. I'm gonna get back with you.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so
I'm doing a workshop. In Central Illinois next week. Actually, I was called, and it's I think you sent it to me.
The Bureau of Prisons thing.
Yeah, no, it's criminal justice. It's federal prosecutors out of Central Illinois, and I'm a little bit intimidated because the special provision workshop and benefits are a little bit different than the typical first discussion. So when you're talking about the 86 of cities I was in, in that one particular year, I was spot on, man. But it's not like I give a special provision workshop all the time. So we'll have to spend a little bit more time on that. But anyway, I guess I'm going on a tangent. But it does make the point that the experience and the confidence level, because of having more opportunities, is going to put you in a much better position. And you've got to be on the spot, on your game in those other unique situations when you do have a special provision opportunity to discussion to talk to somebody.
Now, okay, and let me, before we move on to the next thing, just remind everybody the questions, the chat and the Q&A is open. If anybody has questions or anything, they can certainly jump back or whatever and chime in. Brian's here. Feel free to ask any questions you have. We'll get to them as they come in. Now, on the side of referrals, when you're getting an appointment with a federal employee or really any of let's just talk a little bit about this. As something that we've admired of your practice since, we got to know you all those years ago. Talk to us a little bit about your process. You mentioned a little bit about the sample report, which is great. But beyond that, what does Benham Advisory do to harvest such a rich referral network beyond that?
Well, our system here at our office, we use a couple of tools, and I think I've shared this with you before, but our process, we use Redtail as far as our client management system. Very inexpensive program, but extremely flexible and detailed in what we need. And it's also compliant for securities, which is nice. We also use the Monday app, and I think you probably shared a little bit of that.
Probably not as much as I should on the show, but yeah, we use it internally.
The Monday app is pretty fascinating. We have every workshop we have, every federal employee lead that we have it in a program called Monday. It's all color coded. You can't see it here. Y'all can probably see a screen behind me. The screen behind me is for my clients' benefit. When people come in and sit down at my desk, they can look over my shoulder and see what I show them what I want them to see. But behind them, I look across, and I have a monitor in my office, a 55-inch monitor that I run I run Monday all the time, and it shows me all the business that I have in production. I know whether it's in review to submit, application building, accounting, the account funding, in signatures, everything is detailed, but something you could probably talk more to than me, because Alex knows that I don't know anything about this other than how to look at it. My boys are the ones that build it, but I can change, if I have somebody that signed a signature, approved a signature application for American Equity, for example, whenever I click that it's in funding, I click a button there and lots of steps behind the scene are happening. Emails are being sent to Marcia to tell her to do something, Logan to do something, or the system's fascinating. But that is how we keep track of things. Now, here's the point I guess I should make out of that. Had I been as sophisticated today as I was 15 years ago, we'd be writing business every 20 minutes. I know that we've missed lots of opportunities, but we don't miss anything anymore. I mean, every single lead for the last several years has been pulled into this system. And that's why our business is so consistent right now. We're running a lot of business, both annuity side, AUM side, on a weekly basis. And it's because we're just not letting anything slip through the cracks. And as far as harvesting those old opportunities, I'm looking at stuff here. We've got retirement clients, tax clients, FIBA call clients, workshop clients. We've got stuff all organized now. And we're pulling in opportunities from every single one of those areas that we mentioned because we've got a really good organized system. So it's Redtail for our client management, and then we're using the Monday app. And then as far as how we really nurture the federal stuff, I think you know that we still do a couple of dinner events, and it's harder in this format. We're talking to agents all over the country that are getting leads that are maybe all over the country. It's a little bit harder to have a dinner event. Probably, but one thing I would tell people that if you would think about this, let's kind of paint this picture a little bit. If every single lead that you worked with, let's say they're 45 or 50 years old and they can't do anything with the TSP, and you would send them a sample track report, and if you told them, hey, I've done a bunch of work for you, and I went to the trouble of binding a report, and I know I PDF'd it to you, but I'm going to go ahead and mail it to you, and so I did this work for you. And they look at this and think, wow, this guy went out of his way to do all this work for me. And he asked me a favor. He asked me to take these other 2 sample reports and hand them to 2 people. Now, I want to say this too. He didn't ask me to send these 2 reports to 2 other 45-year-olds. He asked me to send these 2 reports to 2 other people in my department that I know that are looking to retire.
Yeah.
And now you're starting to build. Now you don't have 1 person in that Fort Wayne VA. You have 3 people that you're talking to. And then now you talk to those other 2 people. Now you've got 6, and you got 12, and you got 18. It doesn't take very long before you have enough opportunity that you could go out of your own office into that local area, wherever this is, and host a little event. And now you're starting to really become the federal guy in that particular agency. Now I know that's harder because we're looking all over the country. But if you look long term, what are the opportunities and ways that you can really dominate an area? And if I'm just getting, say, 10 or 20 leads or 50 leads or whatever, that's great that I write business all over the place. But if I start noticing that I can get into one particular area, happens to be local to me, man, I'm gonna hone in on that particular agency, and I'm gonna be the person like they've never seen before, and go into that agency, and I'm gonna do whatever I can do to dominate every retirement plan in that particular agency.
Well, I think about that with like Ryan Palomini. I mean, Ryan Palomini was buying appointments and doing workshops all over the darn country, not at all in Florida, right? And then started following Brian's advice, working more referrals in areas outside. He found himself a little spot in like Roanoke and Raleigh and those areas, and was like, oh, wow, he started to find a little network there. He's like, he followed the advice, doesn't cost you anything for this advice, but here's kind of my cost to anybody that, obviously I can't help other than giving some good advice, is to go find and help me grow my practice to a degree, find somebody that does genuinely need some advice on retirement and do it. Year goes by, fast forward a year, he's moving to Raleigh. He lives there now. And he doesn't buy any more appointments, right? He buys 0 because he's built an entire. He knows he can always turn it back on, but he doesn't because he's got all of his marketing's done for by these internal groups where he is the Fed guy there in that little Roanoke VA and the the Raleigh Durham area. He's been doing some NASA stuff lately. I mean, it's been wild to see him grow, and it was all because he just asked for the referrals. And again, too, it's like. It's also the goal should always be to work towards that. I feel like it should always be to go, because what's what makes a really good closer is the fact that they don't need another close. It's almost like because I don't need it, the stink's off me. I don't need the sale. I'm able to be less pushy, more forthright with my information. I look like the good guy when everybody else is feeling pushy, and it makes them feel more comfortable. And the majority of folks makes them feel more comfortable, and they end up doing sales. So if I don't actually need the sale, then it legitimizes that whole process. I don't have to be a fraud from that perspective. Yeah. I don't have to pretend. I really just don't need this sale. I don't need them to do business with me.
I'm here to help you. And
I'm here to help you. And if it happens, then so be it. Most people choose to do business with us because obviously we're here to help at any point. And so whenever you guys feel comfortable, we'll help you execute that plan. And you do that by, having a like Brian says, investing heavily up front, being patient, having good referral network, building that referral process as rich as you possibly can so that you are in a position where the majority of your business comes from referrals off of seeds that you planted years before, and you are able to take everybody at the top of the pipeline and make it look like you don't need your next sale at all. And like whether you do business with us or not, here's the free advice, blah, 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 and just know that you've got deals coming for the next 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months or forever. In perpetuity for folks like Brian who, religiously will be on every incentive trip we ever do because, because they set up the business the right way a long time ago.
Set up a great funnel.
Yeah. And they just keep pumping into the top of the funnel and they know it'll trickle down eventually and pump out the numbers.
I would say that all your top producers are doing things different than everybody else. We talk about these referral systems. We talk about building the inventory. If you just want to, click along at a couple of million and not do these other things, you're just going to click along at a couple of million. So if you want to be a top level producer, you've got to step outside the box and you have to do things differently, and setting yourself aside is what's going to take you to the next level. And it takes little things like this. And I can give you some ideas of things, but a lot of people have taken ideas I've suggested and made them way better than my idea.
Yeah.
But you've got to do some things differently and work a little harder early to be able to build that momentum to make your job a little bit easier on down the road.
And it's not even just the 2 million. It's not even like when we say top producer, that's 10 million and above. That's like, these are the things you need to be 5 million and above.
Yep.
Right? Like you need to be doing these things to crack that glass ceiling, Yep. It's like, you could be 2 million and be like, I'm only in for a 30-day close.
Get a big year every once in a while, get up to the 3, maybe 4. You have a really good year, but
consistent 5
and above.
Over and over is always rich referral network, constant marketing, investing. Like there's overhead involved in the firm. Like those things need to be done.
You're running a business.
Right. You're running a business. Yeah, that's true.
That's right.
We had a question come in. What's the question there?
Yeah, Milton Krem asked, do you have the ability to figure out clients' military buyback?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Brian, you want to touch on that? Or how do you typically handle that?
I'm sorry, it's not that difficult. I think this would be one Patrick could probably be, or Patrick and Calvin have probably dealt with a lot more than me. But I think, what is it, 3%? 3% of what their earnings were at the time that they were in.
Yep.
They can talk to a clerk at whatever agency they're in, and that person will help them track down the information. And but to be able to on the spot come up with that number is just kind of get an idea of what they made during that time, multiplied times 3%. That's about what the number is going to be, plus the interest.
Yep.
Yeah.
And again, it is going to be one of those things you're going to have to get that record. Yeah. I mean, to be spot on, you're going to be like, hey, reach out to OPM, and they're going to be able to pull your records from active duty. They'll be able to tell you what you were making, and then it's going to be a 3% time plus the interest rate. And quite frankly, it's an easy calculation for them to do. You just have to make that phone call. Yeah. And a lot of times, the federal employee is not looking for you to give them an answer. They're looking for you to give them direction on who exactly is going to have that answer and how do I go about doing it. And if you can just be the person that gives them that advice, that's all the credibility you needed anyway.
Right.
Yeah. If it wasn't something that their HR or OPM would calculate for them, I think it'd be a lot more valuable. But you can just go to your clerk and be like, hey, look, what's my military buyback? You guys can be like, all right, give me probably 6 months to figure it out. But, I'll have somebody calculate it for you. Then they give you a sheet to let you know the dollar value of it, and then you just pay it back.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, though, you want to make sure on military buyback that they're starting that process within the first couple of years so they can get it interest-free.
Yep.
Yeah. What is the year rate on that? Or how many years do they have to start that process interest free?
2 or 3 is it not, Brian? It's like 2 or 3 before the interest starts. Like once you get
I
hired
read it
as a
2 different
civilian.
ways, and we helped write the book, but I think it was 2 years.
I think
do
it
know
is
that,
2 years.
I had a case. One of my favorite case studies was a guy in Oklahoma City that came in, and he wanted to get to 5 years and retire, and he was wearing a military hat, a Navy hat, in the workshop I was speaking at, and the guy was in his 60s, and I said, well, why'd you come? And he said, well, I want to get 5 years in so I can make a little bit of money in a pension. And I said, well, what's the hat saying? He said, U.S. Navy. And I said, were you in the Navy? He said, yeah. And I said, how long? And he said, for 12 years. And he had only been a federal employee for a year and a half. And so he came in, wanted to know how much his annuity was going to be after 5 years. And when he left, we found out he was going to get 17 years of service, and his annuity is going to be $9,000 a year more. And he was able to buy back his time free of interest because he had only been an employee for a year and a half. And so the timing is very important for military buyback.
What was that next comment that just came
in? Diane Davis just mentioned there's a free software program I use from Google that does this for you called Approx, APPROX.
Oh, nice. Approx. Yeah, okay.
Good
Thank you, Diane. That's great to know. We're gonna definitely share that. We'll make sure everybody gets that link. We'll put that in the follow-up email. But yeah, I mean, again, too, you just want to know generally what they were making during their military time, but it's exciting. That's a good question, Milton. First off, military buyback can be a cumbersome one, and when there is military buyback, there's a huge credibility builder when you're talking with folks.
By the way, the answer is yes. When somebody says, should I do it? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
I've almost never seen a situation where we didn't recommend they do it. Very rarely would we not recommend they do it.
We just literally, the guy I mentioned, I went to Fort Myers today to visit. Jacob, you were down there. He was mentioning that he was 12 years military and then 13 years postmaster, or he came in for some other thing and ended up a postmaster. But he bought back. He's over 32 years of something like that total time. I don't know how much in between time, but yeah, he ended up with like 30 something years. He's MRA. Yeah. Steve already moved every bit of it. So anyway, so interesting stuff. I think it speaks loudly what we're talking about today is like, do we think everybody should just go out and go spend the $5,000? I mean, if you can afford it, sure. Go ahead and do it. If you're committed to the Fed space and you think that there's opportunity, or if you've even experienced a couple of good phone calls, that's great. If you're only seeing 10 appointments per month, now's the time to just take a month. Here's my challenge to anybody that's doing 10 appointments per month, paying for 10. If you're at 20, try 30. If you're at 10, try 20. If you're at 20 or 30, try 40. Try taking it up a nudge. Seeing where that number goes for the next 90 days. Try it for 3 months in a row. And if you are not in a position where you've closed these types of numbers, we'll give you the money back for those appointments. The increase. What did you increase to, right?
So $3,000 a month to possibly double your production, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you should start to see those, right? So if you take that number up, all right? So look, call me. We'll talk you through it. But if you're interested in trying that out, we'll see. I mean, this is my encouragement to everybody is to take that challenge, try it for 3 months, see where you end up as far as the appointments go. I'll bet you'll see a large uptake. Now, will you jump right from 120,000 per month to 1.1 million? Maybe it'll take you 2 quarters to get to that point. Yeah. But you will start to see a large increase in your production and for a very nominal cost increase. Like Brian's saying, 12x in 12 times return basically when you hit that 5,000 mark. So anyway, Brian, any other last comments?
I was just thinking when you were talking that everybody listening to this podcast, if somebody walked into their office and said, how can I build a good retirement plan for myself? We would be telling them to put money in every single paycheck, right?
Oh, yeah.
So when we're talking about investing in yourself, we should take our own advice and invest every single month and never have a delay in a purchase. And so make sure that whatever that number is, 10, 20, 30 leads or whatever it is, just do not stop doing it. Do it every single month. And one other little story. I like the stories. I remember one year I trained about 250 people in the estate planning business. This is back in the 90s. And every once in a while, now you've heard me say this before, every once in a while, a gem, just a golden gem person would come in, and I know, man, they're in our language today, they're $20 million producers. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe in the same class, there's a guy that I thought, man, this guy be lucky to make it. And yet we put him out, we put him to work, we give him a few leads, and the gym gets a week full of bad leads. And the guy didn't think I have a chance, ended up with a golden nugget and ends up right in business. And the thing that was always disappointing to me there is I did see at that time, there's different business, but seeing those people that were golden opportunities and golden producers not get lucky early on and not trust the system.
Yeah.
And so they left and then went off someplace else. And yet got people that were, I didn't expect much, great people. We nurtured them into great producers. But the message I would say to everybody, if you're only doing 10, you don't get an opportunity. That doesn't mean the opportunities aren't there, because there's other people in the same situation as you that got 10 appointments that got that golden opportunity. You've got to be consistent. Being consistent gives you the inventory, gives you more opportunity, and it's giving you inventory on which you can build your practice over long term. So don't stop, be consistent, and you'll win the game.
Yeah, you just can't, and again, at a certain point, it's like we can't keep bringing on so many people that are vouching for the quality of these appointments.
Yeah.
Just so many people coming on to the show and talking about their experience. And now Brian, who's been, the largest advocate for the federal system in Megastar history, here kind of reiterating all this. And so, again, it's like this is happening, but every one of those people are seeing this experience, because, again, it's not a one-to-one thing. Does it mean that you're going to close, 10 more $120,000 cases? No, the odds of you running into an $800,000 rollover, like Justin Pierce, who will be on the show here soon, just did the other day, or 1.1 million.
Yep.
He wrote a month prior to that. He's buying almost 100 appointments per month, and he's seeing these monthly. And so no doy.
Yeah.
He's going to write 20 million this year, because he's buying the inventory and running into cases that it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. Oh, I bought 10 or I bought 30 appointments. So now I have $320,000 cases. No, you've increased your chances of finding that doctor that's in a right place at the right time with $800,000 in their TSP and assets all over elsewhere. So it's still suitable for you to move all $800,000.
Yep.
Boom. And you've moved it. So anyway,
it's a numbers game.
It's a numbers game. And they know that. Everybody knows that. Yeah. Right? It takes one to make it all worthwhile. That's the bet. I think we should leave it there to a degree. We have a question that came in. I'm sorry. We had one more.
Oh, no. Diane just said it's not called APROC. She said, Google it, look up military time buyback or military service buyback calculator.
Okay. All right.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
All right. We'll find the calculator Diane's talking about and make sure everybody gets it. Brian, thank you so much for sharing some wisdom with us today. We got to get Brian on more.
Yeah,
honestly, because there's so much good nuggets and stuff. So anyway, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you, everybody, for watching and bearing with me, driving all over creation, coming back to you a little hour late or whatever. But thanks for hanging with us. Hope your Monday's starting strong. Hope for the rest of the week. And reach out to us if you have questions about increasing your lead flow. You will just want to reach out to Megastar and ask whoever your rep is. They'll get you patched through. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Brian.
There you are.